Donald Trump is preparing a phone call with Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine. His advisors have prepared a ceasefire plan. However, President Zelenskyy says that Ukraine needs weapons, but not a help in negotiations with Russia. So why is Donald Trump would like to end the war in Ukraine on any kind of terms, and what are Donald Trump's plans for a ceasefire in Ukraine? The Wall Street Journal reported that are the several plans to end the war in Ukraine, and one plan consists of a ceasefire, demilitarized zone along the front line between Ukraine and Russia, and also the ban of Ukraine's membership in NATO for 20 years. This plan has been proposed by Richard Grenell, former US ambassador to Germany, and Richard Grenell could become the next US Secretary of State, this according to the Axios. Also, Wall Street Journal reported that there are two groups near Trump who would like to propose to advise him on how he can end the war in Ukraine in the nearest future. So the first group is pro-Ukrainian, traditional Republicans, with Mike Pompeo, former US Secretary of State. Pompeo advice suggests to end the war in Ukraine on Ukrainian terms and not to reward Putin's aggression. Pompeo is confident that it is important to put more pressure on Putin, on Russia, provide Ukraine with all what it needs to end the war in Ukraine, and get Putin to a negotiation table and to end the war on appropriate for Ukraine terms without any territorial concessions for Ukraine. On the other hand, there is a group of Richard Grenell, former US ambassador to Germany, and he would like to end the war in Ukraine on any terms, even with territorial concessions to Russia. He would like to end hostilities and organize a ceasefire on any kind of terms. However, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin this night said that he would not like to have a ceasefire in Ukraine. He doesn't like this idea because he would like to conquer the whole of Ukraine and to destroy Ukraine as a sovereign nation, as a sovereign state. That's why Vladimir Putin said that he would not like to see Ukraine with a ceasefire and receiving another military aid package for Ukraine, because he would not like Ukraine to have the ability to defend itself against Russian aggression, against Russian troops. That's why Russian dictator Putin refused for a ceasefire. He refuses to have a ceasefire in Ukraine and to have a peace deal. He proposed Ukraine to have a peace only on Russian terms, with some kind of a negotiation settlement, with territorial concessions to the Russian Federation. Also, the plan which has been proposed by Richard Grenell includes freezing the front line, creating a demilitarized zone between Ukraine and Russia, and also deploying European troops, not American, not UN, United Nations peacekeepers, but deploying European troops to this demilitarized zone to check the implementation of a possible peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. Also, there are some ideas that Ukraine should receive enough weapons to defend itself in case of any future aggression. Trump's advisors propose to continue to support Ukraine with military aid if Ukraine agrees to participate in negotiations with Russia. If Ukraine refuses to negotiate with Russia, Donald Trump will halt supplies of weapons to Ukraine, will stop providing Ukraine with weapons. On the other hand, Donald Trump would like to push to force Putin to negotiations by threatening of providing Ukraine with all what it needs for a victory. If Putin agrees for negotiation settlement in Ukraine, then Ukraine will not receive all weapons which are needed. So these are main ideas which are being discussed in Trump's inner circle, and however, Donald Trump has not yet agreed on any kind of this plan. However, he will choose one of these plans and will choose the people with whom he would like to work in the White House. Also, J.D. Vance earlier supported the idea of a demilitarized zone between Ukraine and Russia. He said that this would end the war in Ukraine. However, President Zelenskyy would not like to have a ceasefire on Russian terms. He said that it's impossible to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours or very fast, because it would mean territorial concessions to Russia. President Zelenskyy is confident that in case of a speedy, peaceful settlement of the war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin would like Ukraine to cede territory to Russia. That's why it would not provide Ukraine with a lasting and just peace. It would only reward Putin's aggression and allow Russian Federation to regroup and to attack Ukraine again in the future, even to try to capture our capital. That's why President Zelenskyy would like to end the war in Ukraine on just terms. Earlier he proposed his own plan to end the war in Ukraine, and this plan proposed Western leaders to put more pressure on Putin to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with Western-made weapons, to force Putin to negotiate with Ukraine in good faith, and to force Putin to make some concessions to Ukraine and to end the war on appropriate terms for Ukraine, to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia and to put more pressure on Kremlin. Also, earlier, Ukrainian government said that there is one term on which Ukraine can start negotiations with Russia. Russia should withdraw its troops at least from the territories which have been occupied by Russia from the 23rd of February 2022. This is a term from Ukrainian side, unless Ukraine would not like to start negotiations, because it would not mean a just peace for Ukraine. Also, Axios reported that there are some candidates for Trump's national security team. Mike Pompeo could become the next Secretary of Defense, and it would be good news for Ukraine because he supports Ukraine and he would not let Russia to win this war. On the other hand, we have Richard Grenell, who could become the next Secretary of State. However, he proposed the demilitarized zone and any kind of concessions to Russia. He proposed a peace on any kind of conditions, on any cost. That's why he could not be a good option for Ukraine. However, we will see what kind of people would surround Donald Trump, and now all depends on those people who will advise Trump, and it all depends on those people who would advise him and who would try to convince him on how he could settle the war in Ukraine, to end this war on a just peace and just to provide Ukraine with enough capabilities to defend itself. This is a key to ending this war on a peace terms and peaceful settlement. And in the end of our conversation, we would like to cover the situation in Germany. Germany will face another chancellor, as Olaf Scholz has fired his finance minister, Christian Lindner. Christian Lindner has been fired by Olaf Scholz, and it means that the governmental coalition has broken. That's why Bundestag will vote for another government in Germany, and another federal election could take place this year. That means that Friedrich Merz, head of another political party in Germany, Christian Democrats, he could become the next chancellor of Germany. And this is a great news for Ukraine because he supports providing Ukraine with Taurus long-range missiles. Earlier this month, Olaf Scholz finally refused to provide Ukraine with Taurus long-range missiles because there are fears of escalation, and personally Olaf Scholz is not capable of making some strong decisions in wartime. However, Friedrich Merz, who could become the next German chancellor, he said that he would provide Ukraine with Taurus missiles unless Putin stops bombing civilian infrastructure for Ukraine. As we all know, Vladimir Putin would not stop this illegal war, and he would not stop bombing civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. That's why Friedrich Merz certainly could provide Ukraine with Taurus missiles and help Ukraine to better defend itself against Russia's illegal and barbaric invasion. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, stay with us on YouTube, and glory to Ukraine!